smell their disdain before I even entered the great hall, a mixture of cedar, pine, and that unmistakable scent of wolves who believed themselves superior. The pack's annual Harvest Moon gathering was supposed to be a celebration, a time when even the lowest-ranked wolves could find a moment of belonging. But for me, it was just another reminder of my place, or lack thereof. My hands trembled as I smoothed down the simple gray dress I'd chosen, not because I wanted to blend into the shadows, but because it was the only clean one I owned. The fabric felt rough against my skin, nothing like the silks and velvets the higher-ranked she-wolves would be wearing tonight. My pale blonde hair fell in loose waves around my shoulders, the only part of me I'd ever been complimented on, though always with the same backhanded phrasing. Such pretty hair for an Omega. The wooden pendant hanging around my neck caught the last rays of sunset streaming through the trees. My grandmother had carved it from an ancient oak struck by lightning. Neither the storm nor the tree expected this piece to survive, Elise, she'd told me, pressing it into my palm on her deathbed. But sometimes what's broken becomes something else entirely. The pendant was my talisman, my reminder that I came from somewhere, from someone, even if the pack treated me as if I'd spawned from nothing. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the heavy oak doors. The cacophony of laughter and conversation dimmed for a moment as several heads turned toward me, then resumed with an added undercurrent of whispers. I kept my eyes lowered, a habit beaten into me through years of avoiding eye contact with dominant wolves. Direct eye contact was a challenge. Looking down was survival. The runt decided to show her face. I heard Kira, one of the alpha females, mutter to her circle of admirers. Doesn't she know Omegas are supposed to serve at these functions, not attend them? I pretended not to hear, though my cheeks burned. It was true that most Omegas worked in the kitchens during celebrations, but the Alpha, our pack leader, had decreed that all wolves were welcome at the Harvest Moon. Even me. Especially after what happened last full moon, when I'd found the lost pup of a neighboring pack during a territorial dispute that might have led to bloodshed. The child's return had eased tensions, though no one had actually thanked me. The Great Hall was transformed for the occasion. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting warm pools of light over long tables laden with autumn's bounty. The scent of roasted venison and baked apples mingled with the natural musk of so many werewolves in one space. At the far end, on a raised platform, stood the ceremonial thrones, massive chairs carved from a single ancient oak, one for the Alpha and one for the Luna, his mate and the female leader of our pack. Only, the Alpha's chair was empty, and so was the Luna's. I shuffled toward a shadowy corner, hoping to find somewhere to sit where I wouldn't draw attention. The benches at the lower tables were already crowded with Beta and Delta wolves, their conversation animated as they waited for the pack leaders to arrive and begin the feast. No one made space for me. In fact, several shifted closer together when they saw me approaching. "Not here," a burly Beta male said without looking at me. "Find somewhere else." I retreated, cheeks burning hotter now. Where was I supposed to go? The doors to the kitchen swung open, releasing another wave of delicious smells, and I briefly considered sneaking in there. At least among the cooking staff I might find some semblance of acceptance. But the Alpha's decree echoed in my mind. All wolves were welcome in the hall tonight. Then I spotted it. A small alcove behind a thick column, partially concealed by decorative autumn foliage. A single chair sat there, simple but elegant, almost as if it had been forgotten. Perhaps it was meant for an elder who hadn't arrived yet, but at that moment, my feet ached from standing, and my spirit ached from rejection. Just for a moment, I told myself. I'd sit just for a moment, gather my strength, then find somewhere else to be invisible. The chair seemed to beckon me. As I approached, I noticed intricate carvings along its arms and back, wolves running through forests, the moon in various phases, ancient symbols of our kind that I recognized from my grandmother's teachings. It was beautiful, but not ostentatious, not like the ceremonial thrones. I sank into it, expecting the hard surface of wood, but instead found myself embraced by a seat that seemed to mold itself around me. A soft sigh escaped my lips as the tension in my muscles began to ease. For the first time that evening, I felt comfortable, almost welcome. That's when I noticed the silence. The entire hall had gone quiet, and every pair of eyes was fixed on me with expressions ranging from shock to horror. "What is she doing?" someone whispered harshly. "How dare she sit there?" My heart began to pound as I realized my mistake. This wasn't some forgotten chair for elders. The placement, the carvings, the deference with which everyone was staring at it. This was no ordinary seat. The realization hit me like ice water. I was sitting in the Luna's chair, the sacred throne that had been moved for cleaning, temporarily placed in this alcove away from its usual position on the dais. The chair that only the Alpha's mate, the female leader of our pack, was permitted to occupy. I scrambled to stand, but my body wouldn't cooperate, not out of defiance, but out of a strange, sudden feeling that the chair itself was holding me there. Not forcefully, but like an embrace I couldn't quite bring myself to break. What is the meaning of this? A deep voice cut through the murmurs, and the crowd parted like water to reveal Magnus, our Alpha, striding toward me with his dark eyes flashing gold with controlled fury. Behind him followed his expected Luna-to-be, Serena, her perfect features contorted with indignation, her hand gripping his arm possessively. "I'm sorry," I stammered, trying again to rise. I didn't realize." "Get up," Serena hissed, her voice carrying in the silent hall. "That chair is not for filthy Omegas." I pushed against the armrests, but something extraordinary happened. The wood beneath my palms warmed, and a soft glow began to emanate from the carvings, the light tracing the patterns of wolves and moons, until the entire chair shimmered with a pale blue luminescence. Gasps echoed through the hall. Magnus froze mid-step, his expression shifting from anger to disbelief. "Impossible," he breathed. The chair had responded to me, the forgotten Omega, the runt of the pack. And judging by the stunned faces around me, this had never happened before. Serena's face drained of color, then flushed crimson with rage. "This is some kind of trick," she snarled, storming forward. "Get out of my chair." She reached for my arm, but the moment her fingers came within inches of the glowing wood, she recoiled with a cry of pain. The chair had rejected her touch. "Magnus," she appealed to the Alpha, who stood transfixed, his gaze moving between the chair, me, and the markings that now pulsed with light in rhythm with my racing heart. He stepped forward cautiously, not reaching for the chair, but studying it with an intensity that made me want to shrink into the wood. "The legends," he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. Could it be true? "What legends?" Serena demanded, nursing her hand. "This is absurd. She's nothing. A nobody." But Magnus wasn't listening to her anymore. His eyes, now fully golden as his wolf rose closer to the surface, were fixed on me. Not with the dismissive glance I was accustomed to, but with a searching, penetrating gaze that seemed to look through me, into me. "The chair chooses," he said quietly, his voice nonetheless carrying in the silent hall. "It has always been more than wood. Our ancestors imbued it with their magic, their wisdom. It recognizes the true Luna, regardless of rank or blood." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "The chair chooses? But that would mean—" "No!" Serena's shriek cut through the whispers. "This can't be happening. I am to be your Luna. We've planned this for years. Our families, our packs. Everything is arranged." Magnus didn't look at her, his gaze still locked with mine. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to look away from an Alpha. Something about the chair, about this moment, gave me a courage I'd never known. "Stand up," he instructed me, but gently now, all trace of anger gone from his voice. This time, the chair released me, the glow dimming slightly as I rose to my feet. I felt different somehow, taller, steadier, as if the chair had awakened something dormant inside me. Magnus extended his hand. "Come." I hesitated, looking at his outstretched palm, the hand of our Alpha, being offered to me, the lowliest of Omegas. This had to be some cruel joke, some elaborate humiliation. "This is madness," Serena hissed, stepping between us. "Magnus, think about what you're doing. She's nothing. A runt, barely even a wolf. You can't possibly—" "The chair has spoken," an elderly voice called out. The crowd parted once more to reveal Elder Thalia, our oldest and most respected pack member, leaning on her gnarled walking stick. It hasn't chosen in 5 generations, not since the Great War, when our pack needed true guidance, true heart. The chair sees what we do not. Thalia's roomy eyes found mine, and a smile creased her ancient face. I always wondered about you, child. There was something your grandmother saw too, wasn't there? Something she protected. Before I could respond, a commotion at the far end of the hall drew everyone's attention. The massive doors burst open, admitting a gust of cold night air and 3 large wolves I didn't recognize. They shifted as they entered, their naked human forms quickly covered by cloaks handed to them by our sentries. Alpha Magnus, the foremost of them, addressed our leader with a stiff nod. We bring news from the northern packs. The Silverclaw Alliance has been broken. There are rumors of attacks at the borders. War is coming. The words fell like stones into still water, ripples of fear spreading through the gathering. War. It had been generations since the last great conflict between werewolf packs, but the stories were still told around winter fires, tales of bloodshed, of territories lost and families destroyed. Magnus's face hardened, the momentary wonder replaced by the mask of leadership, but his hand remained extended toward me. Then it seems the chair has chosen its moment well, he said, his voice carrying authority that silenced all whispers. We will need every advantage in the days to come. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, as the northern messenger's eyes widened, taking in the glowing chair and our joined hands. The Luna's chair, the messenger whispered. It's chosen. Behind Magnus, Serena's face contorted with a hatred so pure it chilled me to the bone. But there was something else in her eyes, too. Fear, and a calculating gleam that made me certain this night was only the beginning of my troubles. As Magnus led me toward the dais, toward the Alpha's throne beside which the Luna's chair would normally stand, I felt hundreds of eyes burning into my back, some curious, some angry, some calculating their new approach to the Omega who might become Luna. I don't understand, I whispered. My voice meant only for Magnus. Why me? He glanced down at me, his expression unreadable. That, he said quietly, is what we're both going to find out. Sleep eluded me that night. How could it not? When my world had been turned inside out in the space of a single evening. The pack's guest quarters, where I now found myself instead of the tiny shack at the edge of territory that had been my home for years, felt alien and oppressive despite their luxury. Moonlight filtered through gauzy curtains, illuminating a room larger than any I'd ever occupied. The bed was soft, the linen smelled of lavender and cedar. But I couldn't relax. My mind replayed the events in the great hall over and over. The chair's glow, Magnus's extended hand, Serena's venomous glare, and the whispers, always the whispers, that followed me as I was escorted here. This changes nothing, Serena had spat when Magnus was pulled away by his advisors to discuss the Northern Pack's warning. A chair doesn't make you Luna. You're still nothing. Worse than nothing. You're a mistake. I touched the wooden pendant at my throat, my grandmother's final gift. Had she known? Was this what she'd been preparing me for with her strange lessons and cryptic sayings? She'd been cast out from her own pack long before joining ours, bringing only her infant daughter, my mother, with her. Both had died before I reached adulthood, leaving me alone with only fragments of their wisdom. A soft knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. Who would visit at this hour? Dawn was still hours away. Yes? I called, pulling the borrowed nightgown tighter around my shoulders. The door creaked open to reveal Elder Thalia, her silver hair gleaming in the moonlight, her bent frame supported by her walking stick. May I enter, child? I nodded, too surprised to speak. The elder was respected, feared even for her knowledge of pack history and her occasional prophetic visions. She rarely sought anyone out directly. You haven't slept, she observed, shuffling toward the window seat where I perched. Understandable. Few would, after such a night. I don't belong here, I blurted out, the words escaping before I could stop them. Thalia's ancient eyes crinkled with something between amusement and sympathy. The chair disagrees. It's just wood, I whispered, though I knew it wasn't. I'd felt something when I sat there, a recognition, a connection that went beyond physical comfort. Just wood? Thalia chuckled, the sound like dry leaves rustling. Just as you are just an omega? No, child. That chair was carved from the heart of the first tree, the one that grew from the burial site of the original pack. It has witnessed the rise and fall of countless alphas and lunas. It knows what our pack needs. She reached into the folds of her robe and withdrew something wrapped in faded cloth. Your grandmother asked me to give you this when the time came. I believe that time is now. With trembling fingers, I unwrapped the bundle to reveal a small leather-bound book, its cover worn with age and use. Opening it, I found pages filled with elegant flowing script, some in languages I couldn't recognize, others in the common tongue. The Luna's grimoire, Thalia explained. Your grandmother was its keeper before she came to our pack. It contains the collected wisdom of every true Luna since the first days. Spells, prophecies, guidance for times of war and peace. I stared at the book, then at Thalia. But my grandmother wasn't a Luna. The old wolf's smile deepened the wrinkles around her eyes. Wasn't she? History is written by those who survive, child. And sometimes, the truth is kept hidden to protect it. She tapped the book with one gnarled finger. Read, learn. You'll need this knowledge sooner than you think. Before I could question her further, another knock came at the door. Harder, more insistent than Thalia's had been. Come, I called, quickly hiding the book beneath my pillow. The door swung open to reveal Magnus, still dressed in the formal attire from the gathering, though his hair was disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. His powerful frame filled the doorway, his scent, pine and earth and something distinctly alpha, flooding the room. Elder, he acknowledged Thalia with a respectful nod. I need to speak with... He faltered, apparently realizing he didn't know how to address me in my new, uncertain position. Elise, I supplied quietly. My name is Elise. Something flickered in his golden eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that he'd never bothered to learn my name before tonight. Elise, he repeated, the sound of my name in his deep voice sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. Thalia rose with a knowing smile that made me blush. I'll leave you two to talk. Remember what I said, child. She patted my hand, then made her slow way to the door, pausing briefly beside Magnus. She's stronger than she appears, she told him, not bothering to lower her voice. You'll need that strength in the days to come. When the door closed behind her, an awkward silence fell. Magnus remained near the entrance, as if uncertain whether to approach. I stayed perched on the window seat, moonlight at my back. The northern delegates have shared more information, he finally said, his voice carefully controlled. 3 packs along the border have been attacked in the past month. Villages burned, territories seized. The Blood Moon Pack is expanding aggressively under their new alpha. I knew of the Blood Moon Pack only from whispered stories, a group known for their brutal tactics and disdain for the ancient laws that governed relations between packs. Why are you telling me this? I asked, genuinely confused. Even if the chair had somehow chosen me, I was still an Omega, with no experience in pack politics or warfare. Magnus crossed to the window, keeping a careful distance between us as he gazed out at the moonlit forest. The Luna's role is not just ceremonial. She is the pack's heart, its moral compass. She advises the Alpha, helps settle disputes, oversees healing and magic. He turned to face me. If war is coming, the pack will need a true Luna. I'm not a true anything, I said, the words bitter on my tongue. I've spent my life being reminded of that. One strange night doesn't change who, what I am. Doesn't it? Magnus challenged, his gaze intense. The chair has never been wrong. Never in all our recorded history. Then perhaps this is the first time, I countered, a boldness I'd never felt before rising within me. Or perhaps it wasn't really choosing me, but rejecting Serena. Have you considered that? A flash of something, anger, amusement, crossed his features. The thought occurred to me. But then, it would have rejected others before her. It didn't. It waited. For you. The weight of his words hung in the air between us. Magnus had been Alpha for 5 years, ever since his father's death. In that time, he'd been expected to take a Luna, but though Serena had been the presumptive choice, the official ceremony had been repeatedly delayed for various political reasons. Now I wondered if there had been another factor, if somehow the chair had been waiting. "I can't be what you need," I said softly. "I know nothing of leadership or magic or war." "Yet," Magnus replied simply. He hesitated, then added, "I won't force this on you. If you wish to refuse the chair's choice, you can. No one has ever done so before, but these are unprecedented times." I considered his words. Refuse? Return to my solitary existence on the pack's fringes? The thought should have been comforting, but instead, it felt hollow. "And if I don't refuse?" Magnus's expression softened slightly. "Then tomorrow, we announce you as Luna-elect. Your training begins immediately. Elder Thalia will instruct you in our history and the Luna's traditional duties. My sister Lyra will teach you etiquette and politics, and I—" He paused. "I will help you understand what it means to lead." The thought was terrifying. Me, learning to lead. The pack would never accept it. Serena and her allies would fight it every step of the way, and yet... My fingers found my grandmother's pendant again. Sometimes what's broken becomes something else entirely. "I need time," I said. "To think." Magnus nodded. "Until sunrise. That's all I can give you. The pack needs stability, especially with the threat of war looming. We can't appear divided." He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I believe the chair chose well. After he left, I retrieved the grimoire from beneath my pillow. The book seemed to hum with energy as I opened it, the pages falling naturally to an entry written in a hand similar to my grandmother's. The true Luna's power comes not from dominance, but from compassion. Not from fear, but from love. The wolves follow the alpha because they must. They follow the Luna because she holds their hearts. Remember this when war threatens and blood calls to blood. The strongest magic lies in mercy. As dawn's first light crept into the room, I made my decision. The great hall was less crowded than the previous night. Only the pack council, the elders, and key family representatives were present. Serena stood with her family, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Magnus waited on the dais, looking composed but tired, as if he hadn't slept either. All eyes turned to me as I entered, my simple dress replaced with one Lyra had sent to my room, still modest compared to what the higher-ranked wolves wore, but made of finer material, a soft blue that matched my eyes. I walked steadily toward the dais where the Luna's chair had been returned to its proper place beside the Alpha's throne. The chair seemed to brighten as I approached, though it didn't glow as dramatically as it had the night before. "You've made your choice?" Magnus asked formally. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my grandmother's pendant against my skin, the knowledge of the grimoire tucked safely away in my room. "I have," I answered, my voice stronger than I expected. "I accept. Block 3. 1 month." That's how long I'd been Luna-elect, and every day felt like walking through a field of hidden traps. Some days, I stepped carefully enough to avoid them. Other days, I fell spectacularly, providing endless entertainment for those who still saw me as nothing more than an upstart Omega playing at leadership. "Back straight," Lyra instructed, circling me like a predator as I attempted to balance a stack of ancient texts on my head. A Luna never slouches, even when she's exhausted. I adjusted my posture, trying not to let the books topple. Lyra, Magnus's younger sister, had taken her role as my etiquette instructor with frightening seriousness. Unlike Serena and her allies, Lyra didn't seem to resent me. If anything, she appeared determined to transform me into a proper Luna through sheer force of will. "Better," she conceded, removing the books. "Now, recite the lineage of the 5 great packs." I drew a deep breath. "The Silvermoon pack descends from the first wolf, Alaric the Wise, whose children founded the other 4. Moonclaw to the north, Shadowtail to the east, Riverbound to the south, and our own pack, Stoneheart to the west. Each pack follows the bloodline of..." My recitation continued, facts and names I'd been cramming into my head night after night. Some came from Lyra's lessons, others from the ancient grimoire I studied in secret. Elder Thalia knew about the book, of course, but we'd agreed it was safer to keep its existence from most of the pack. The grimoire contained knowledge that many would kill for, spells of protection and healing, yes, but also darker magic that could bind wolves against their will or sever pack bonds permanently. Acceptable, Lyra said when I finished, though I caught a glimpse of approval in her eyes. You learn quickly for someone who never had formal education. It wasn't quite a compliment, but I'd learned to take what I could get. Thank you. Lyra checked the ornate clock on the wall. It's nearly time for the Border Patrol briefing. Magnus will expect you there. My stomach tightened. The border patrols had intensified since news of the Blood Moon Pack's aggression. 3 more settlements had been attacked in the past weeks, each one closer to our territory than the last. Magnus spent most days in strategy meetings, returning late to the pack house with shadows under his eyes and tension in every line of his body. We hadn't spoken privately since the night I'd accepted the Luna's role. He was polite but distant during council meetings, treating me with a formal respect that somehow felt worse than his previous indifference. The connection I'd felt that night, the moment when the chair had glowed and his eyes had met mine, seemed like a dream. Go change, Lyra advised, eyeing my practice clothes critically. Wear the green dress. It makes you look less fragile. I bit back a retort. Lyra meant well, and she wasn't wrong. Despite a month of better food and rest, I still looked like what I was, an Omega who'd spent years on the edge of starvation. The wolf inside me was small, pale gray, where most of our pack wolves were various shades of brown or black, with none of the bulk or muscle that mark the higher ranks. In my room, I changed quickly, brushing my pale blonde hair until it shone and securing my grandmother's pendant around my neck. The grimoire lay hidden in a compartment Thalia had shown me beneath a floorboard, safer there than carried with me, though I missed its reassuring weight. The council chamber was already full when I arrived. Magnus stood at the head of the long table, maps spread before him, his dark hair falling across his forehead as he leaned forward to indicate something to the gathered patrol leaders. He looked up as I entered, our eyes meeting briefly before he returned his attention to the maps. I took my place at the opposite end of the table, the position traditionally held by the Luna. Serena, who had been forced to yield that place to me, now sat among her family members, her gaze burning into me with undisguised hatred. The Blood Moon Alpha is testing our defenses, one of the patrol leaders was saying. Their scouts have been spotted here, here, and here. He pointed to locations increasingly close to our central territory. And the Northern Alliance? Magnus asked. Have they sent the reinforcements they promised? A grim silence fell over the table. No, Alpha, another wolf reported. They've withdrawn to defend their own borders. It seems the Blood Moon has allies we didn't know about. The Darkwater Pack has joined them. Murmurs of concern rippled through the room. The Darkwater Pack was small but vicious, known for their guerrilla tactics and specialized night fighting. So we stand alone, Magnus said, his voice flat. Perhaps not entirely, I found myself saying, the words emerging before I could stop them. All eyes turned to me with expressions ranging from surprise to skepticism. I hadn't spoken during these meetings before, content to observe and learn. What do you mean? Magnus asked, his tone neutral. I hesitated. What I was about to suggest came from the grimoire, from passages written in my grandmother's hand. The Eastern Packs, the Shadow Tale. They have no love for the Blood Moon after the last war. They might be persuaded to ally with us. The Shadow Tale hasn't answered a call to alliance in 3 generations, one of the older council members scoffed. They're isolationists. Yes, I acknowledged, but according to our records, they once had close ties with our pack. Blood ties. I glanced at Magnus. Your great-grandmother was Shadowtail before she became Luna here. Magnus's eyebrows rose slightly. That's true, but how did you... The Luna's archives, I said quickly, not wanting to reveal the grimoire. Elder Thalia has been teaching me our history. Thalia nodded, her ancient eyes twinkling. The girl studies diligently. Even so, Serena cut in, her voice dripping with disdain. What makes you think they'd listen to us now? Or to you specifically? The emphasis on the last word made her meaning clear. What would the proud Eastern wolves think of an Omega Luna elect? I lifted my chin, because I believe I know something they want, something we can trade for alliance. And what might that be? Magnus asked, looking genuinely curious now. The location of the Heartstone, I said quietly. The room erupted in shocked whispers. The Heartstone was a legendary artifact, said to contain the essence of the first wolf. Each of the 5 great packs had once possessed such a stone, sources of power and pack identity. Over the centuries, most had been lost, including the Shadowtails, supposedly during a great flood 3 generations ago. That's a myth, Serena declared. A children's tale. There's no such thing as Heartstones. Elder Thalia thumped her walking stick against the floor. Not a myth, she said firmly. I've seen our own, hidden in the Alpha's vault. It pulses with the lifeblood of our pack. Magnus nodded slowly. The Heartstones are real, but the Shadowtails was lost. Everyone knows this. It wasn't lost, I said. It was hidden. By your great-grandmother when she came here as Luna. Again, this came from the grimoire, from a passage written in fading ink that had taken me hours to decipher. She feared the Shadowtail was growing corrupt, that their alpha was using the stone's power in ways that violated pack law. She brought it here for safekeeping. Magnus stared at me, his expression unreadable. If this is true, why hasn't any Luna since her time returned it or used it as a bargaining chip? Because soon after, the Great War began, I explained. Communications between packs broke down. Your great-grandmother died in the fighting before she could reveal what she'd done. The knowledge was lost, or rather hidden, passed down through certain channels. I could feel Talia's approving gaze. The old wolf knew exactly where this information had come from. And where is this stone now? One of the council members asked skeptically. I took a deep breath. I believe it's hidden within the Luna's chair. This caused another uproar. Magnus raised his hand for silence, his eyes never leaving mine. That's a serious claim. What evidence do you have? The chair recognized her, Thalia interjected. It wouldn't do that for just anyone. The stones respond to those with the right frequency in their blood. Blood, Serena repeated sarcastically. Now we're talking about blood magic? This is absurd. Not blood magic, I corrected gently. Heritage, connection. The chair, and the stone within it, recognized something in me that resonated with it. I touched my pendant unconsciously. My grandmother came from the East. She never spoke of it, but I think she might have had Shadowtail blood. Magnus was silent for a long moment, considering. Finally, he nodded. We'll investigate this claim. If the stone is indeed hidden within the chair, and if it can be safely extracted, it could give us the leverage we need with the Shadowtail. And if it's not there? Serena challenged. If this is just another Omega fairy tale? Then we've lost nothing but time, Magnus replied evenly. And time is precious, so let's not waste more of it on speculation. He turned to his patrol leaders. Double the watches. No one goes out alone. If the blood moon is testing us, let's show them our teeth. As the council broke up, Magnus caught my eye and gestured for me to stay. My heart quickened as the others filed out, leaving us alone in the chamber. That was unexpected, he said once we were alone. How long have you known about the stone? I chose my words carefully. I've been piecing it together from various sources. Elder Thalia's teaching, the archives. I hesitated. And dreams. Dreams? His eyebrow arched. Since I sat in the chair, I've been having vivid dreams, women I've never met, speaking in languages I somehow understand. It wasn't entirely showing me things. The grimoire had triggered dreams, visions of past Lunas performing rituals and casting spells I'd never imagined possible. Magnus studied me, then nodded slowly. The Luna's gift. The connection to those who came before. My mother spoke of it before she died. He stepped closer, close enough that I could detect the subtle changes in his scent. Still alpha, still pine and earth, but with a new note, something almost like cinnamon, warm and inviting. If you're right about the stone, he said softly, you may have just saved our pack. For the first time since that night in my room, I felt a genuine connection between us. Not the formal politeness of recent weeks, but something deeper, a recognition. I hope so, I whispered, because I think we're running out of time. The extraction ritual was set for the night of the half moon, 3 days after the council meeting. According to the grimoire, the lunar phase would enhance our chances of removing the Heartstone without damaging either it or the chair. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. Focus, Elise, Elder Thalia chided as my concentration wavered again. We sat cross-legged in her private chambers, surrounded by bundles of herbs and ancient texts. The scent of sage and rosemary hung heavy in the air. The ritual requires absolute precision. If your mind wanders, the consequences could be severe. I'm sorry, I murmured, rubbing my temples. Sleep had become elusive, my nights haunted by increasingly vivid dreams, past Lunas whispering urgently, showing me visions of blood and fire, of wolves running through darkness. And always, a pulsing blue stone at the center of it all, calling to me. You're carrying too much, Thalia observed, her rheumy eyes surprisingly sharp. The weight of the pack's expectations, the stone's energy reaching out to you, and she paused, a knowing smile crinkling her face, other concerns. Heat flooded my cheeks. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? She chuckled. I may be old, child, but I'm not blind. The way you watch him when you think no one sees. The way he watches you when he thinks the same. My heart stuttered. Magnus has been nothing but formal with me. Professional. Of course he has. He's the Alpha, and you're the Luna elect. There are protocols, traditions. She reached for a sprig of lavender, crushing it between her fingers and releasing its calming scent. But the bond between Alpha and Luna goes beyond formality. It must, for the pack to thrive. I looked away, unwilling to examine the feelings that had been growing within me, feelings that made no sense for an Omega to have toward an Alpha. Despite the chair's choice, despite my new position, the old hierarchies remained deeply ingrained within me. I don't know how to do this, I admitted quietly. Any of it. The ritual, being Luna, facing war. Thalia's gnarled hand covered mine, surprisingly warm and strong. No Luna does, at first. But the wisdom of those who came before lives in you now. Trust it. Trust yourself. A knock at the door interrupted us. Lyra entered, her usual composure slightly frayed around the edges. Scouts have returned, she announced without preamble. The Blood Moon Pack has crossed our outer boundary markers. Magnus is calling an emergency council. My stomach dropped. When? Now. Lyra's gaze flicked to the ritual preparations scattered around us. But this takes precedence. The stone is our best hope for alliance. Thalia nodded grimly. We continue as planned. The ritual at moonrise. Until then, see what the council decides. The council chamber hummed with tension when I arrived. Maps had been updated with red markers showing blood moon incursions. There were far too many of them, forming a clear pattern of encirclement. They're testing our response times, Magnus was explaining as I slipped into my seat. His eyes met mine briefly, acknowledging my presence before returning to the map. Probing for weaknesses. So far, they've retreated when confronted, but each incursion comes deeper into our territory. Why not strike at their main force? One of the younger council members suggested. Take the fight to them instead of waiting. Because that's exactly what they want. Magnus replied, his voice level but firm. To draw us out, divide our strength. The Blood Moon Alpha is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. What about the Shadowtail? Another asked. Has there been any response to our message? Magnus shook his head. Nothing yet. But it's only been 2 days, and the Eastern Pacts are notoriously deliberate in their diplomacy. We may not have time for deliberation, Serena cut in, her voice sharp. She had maintained her council position through family ties, though her influence had waned since my elevation. If the Heartstone exists and can be retrieved, we should send it immediately as proof of good faith, not wait for their response. Her suggestion surprised me. It was the first time she'd acknowledged even the possibility that the stone was real. Something about her tone made my wolf stir uneasily. The stone cannot be transported without proper containment, I found myself saying. According to the records, its power can be volatile, dangerous, if not handled correctly. Serena's eyes narrowed. More convenient excuses. Perhaps there is no stone at all. We'll know tonight, Magnus said with finality. Until then, we strengthen our defenses and prepare for all possibilities. He turned to the patrol leaders. Double the watches. Arm everyone who can fight. Send the pups and elders to the central den. It's the most defensible position. The council broke, each member heading to their assigned tasks with grim determination. I moved to follow, but Magnus called my name, holding me back. When we were alone, he moved closer, his scent washing over me. "Are you ready for tonight?" he asked, his voice lower, gentler than the commanding tone he'd used with the council. "As ready as I can be," I answered honestly. His eyes searched mine. "Thalia believes in you. So do I." The simple statement warmed something inside me. "Why?" I couldn't help asking. "You hardly knew I existed before the chair chose me. Now you're trusting me with the pack's survival." A shadow crossed his face. "That's my burden to bear, that I failed to see what was in front of me. A true alpha should know every member of his pack, not just the ones who make themselves known." His honesty disarmed me. In the month since becoming Luna-elect, I'd learned that Magnus was a good alpha, fair, strategic, protective. But I hadn't expected this kind of self-reflection. "The chair chose better than I deserved," he continued quietly. "You've brought knowledge and perspective we desperately need." His hand lifted, hesitating just short of touching my face. "Whatever happens tonight, whatever comes after, know that you've already proven yourself a true Luna." The moment stretched between us, fragile and charged. Then footsteps in the corridor broke the spell, and Magnus stepped back, his expression returning to the mask of alpha authority. "Moonrise," he said simply. "In the Great Hall." The Luna's chair had been moved to the center of the Great Hall, surrounded by a circle of salt and crushed herbs. Candles burned at the cardinal points, their flames perfectly still in the breathless air. Only a handful of witnesses were present. Magnus, Thalia, Lyra, and 2 trusted council members. Serena had argued for attendance but had been overruled. The fewer present, the better our chances of success, according to the grimoire. I wore a simple white dress, my hair loose around my shoulders, my grandmother's pendant the only adornment. My bare feet felt cold against the stone floor as I approached the chair, my heart thundering in my chest. "Remember," Thalia whispered. "Let the past Lunas guide you. Feel their presence. The words will come." I nodded, unable to speak through my dry throat. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the circle and sat in the chair. The connection was immediate and overwhelming, far stronger than the first time. The chair warmed beneath me, the carvings beginning to glow with that now familiar blue light. But this time, the glow spread, flowing up my arms like luminous water, tracing patterns on my skin that matched the chair's ancient symbols. Gasps echoed from the witnesses, but they sounded distant, underwater. My awareness had expanded, stretching back through time. I could feel them now. The Lunas who had come before, their knowledge and power flowing into me like a river joining the sea. Words rose to my lips, a language older than our pack, older perhaps than human memory. The chair's glow intensified with each syllable, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat, with the half-moon rising outside. The carvings began to shift beneath my fingers, wood flowing like liquid, revealing a hidden compartment in the right armrest. Inside, nestled in a hollow precisely its size, lay a stone the blue of twilight skies, shot through with silver veins that moved and shifted as if alive. The Heartstone. With trembling fingers, I reached for it. The moment my skin made contact, a jolt of pure energy surged through me. Visions flooded my mind, not just of past Lunas now, but of wolves running through ancient forests, of the first wolf howling at the moon, of pack bonds forming and breaking and forming again across centuries. I lifted the stone from its resting place, cradling it in my palms. It was surprisingly light, warm like a living thing, its glow synchronized with my pulse. "It's real," someone whispered. Lyra, I thought, though my senses were still partially submerged in the stone's power. "The containment vessel," Thalia prompted, her voice breaking through my trance. Magnus stepped forward, holding an ornate box lined with silver and inscribed with protective runes. I tried to place the stone inside, but my hands wouldn't cooperate. The stone seemed reluctant to leave my touch, its light pulsing more intensely. "Elise," Magnus said softly, "you need to let it go." I nodded, understanding intellectually but finding it nearly impossible to break the connection. The stone's energy had twined with mine, recognizing something in my blood, in my essence. With immense effort, I placed it in the box. The moment the lid closed, I gasped as if surfacing from deep water, the visions and voices receding. The chair's glow dimmed to a soft ambient light, no longer synchronized with my heartbeat. "You did it," Magnus murmured, his eyes wide with wonder and something else, pride perhaps. I tried to stand but found my legs unsteady. Magnus caught me before I could fall, his arm strong around my waist. The contact sent a different kind of energy through me, one that had nothing to do with ancient magic and everything to do with the man beside me. "Is it enough?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Will it convince the Shadowtail? If anything will, this will," Thalia assured me, examining the box with reverent hands. Their lost heartstone, returned after generations, a blood debt repaid. A commotion outside the hall interrupted the moment. The doors burst open, admitting a breathless patrol leader. "Alpha, the northern boundary is under attack. Full assault, not just testing. The Blood Moon Pack has brought their entire force." Magnus's arm tightened around me briefly before he released me, already shifting into battle mode. "Numbers. At least 100 wolves, maybe more. They've breached the outer defenses. Sound the alarm. All fighters to their positions." Magnus turned to Lyra. "Get the elders and pups to the central den." "Now." As the hall erupted into activity, Magnus caught my gaze. "Stay with Thalia. Keep the stone safe. If we fall, take it and run. Get to the Shadowtail territory. They'll grant you sanctuary if you bring them their heartstone." "I'm not leaving," I said firmly, surprising myself with my resolve. "My place is here, with the pack. With you." Something flashed in his eyes. Fear, yes, but also a fierce joy. "Then stay close. Aluna protects her pack in her own way." As Magnus strode out to organize the defense, Thalia pressed something into my hand, a small leather pouch filled with herbs. "Protection magic," she whispered. "From the grimoire. It won't stop teeth or claws, but it will cloud the mind of anyone who means you harm. Use it wisely." I clutched the pouch, my mind racing. Outside, howls split the night. Our pack's alarm calls, answered by the deeper, more menacing howls of the attacking Blood Moon wolves. War had arrived, and we weren't ready. The Shadowtail alliance, our best hope, was still uncertain. The Heartstone, our bargaining chip, had only just been recovered, and somewhere in the confusion, I realized Serena was nowhere to be seen. Chaos reigned in the Packlands. The night air carried the scent of blood and fear, punctuated by snarls and howls as wolves clashed in the darkness. I moved through shadows with Thalia at my side, the Heartstone's containment box clutched to my chest. Its weight seemed to pulse against my hands, as if the stone inside could sense the danger surrounding us. "The central den," Thalia wheezed, leaning heavily on her walking stick. Despite her age, she moved with surprising speed. "Magnus will have secured it by now." I nodded, my senses on high alert. The protection pouch hung around my neck alongside my grandmother's pendant, both talismans warm against my skin. The grimoire's spells echoed in my mind, ready to be called forth if needed. In the month since becoming Luna Elect, I'd memorized every protection charm I could find, never truly believing I'd need to use them so soon. A crash and snarl from our left sent us pressing into the shadows of a storage hut. 3 massive wolves burst into view. Blood Moon Pack by their scent, darker and muskier than our own wolves. They paused, sniffing the air, their eyes glinting in the half-moonlight. "Don't move," Thalia breathed, barely audible. "The herbs will mask our scent, but movement will give us away." I stood frozen, hardly daring to breathe. The largest of the wolves, a brindled beast with a scar across his muzzle, turned toward our hiding place, nostrils flaring. Without conscious thought, I reached for the magic I'd been studying. Words formed in my mind, not spoken aloud, but visualized as glowing symbols. "Shield us from sight, shield us from scent, pass us by, Find nothing here. The brindled wolf hesitated, confusion crossing his features. He took a step toward us, then paused again. His companions growled impatiently. After a moment that felt like eternity, he shook his massive head and turned away, leading the others toward the western edge of the settlement. "You did that," Talia whispered, awe in her ancient voice, the confusion spell. Without speaking it aloud, I nodded, shocked by my own abilities. The grimoire had mentioned that the strongest magic required no words, only intent and connection to the power that ran through all wolves. We continued our journey toward the central den, a stone structure built into the hillside at the heart of pack territory. Designed as a last refuge, its single entrance made it easily defensible, but also a potential trap if overrun. As we approached, a familiar scent stopped me cold. Blood. Magnus's blood. My heart lurched painfully. "He's hurt," I gasped, instinctively moving faster. Thalia grabbed my arm. "Carefully, child. Your emotions will cloud your judgment." I took a steadying breath, forcing my racing thoughts to calm. The Luna serves the pack, not just the Alpha. The grimoire had emphasized this repeatedly. My duty was to all our wolves. At the den entrance, 2 guards challenged us, then quickly ushered us inside when they recognized us. The cavernous interior was crowded with elders, pups, and the injured. Lyra moved among them, organizing care and comfort with quiet efficiency. Her face was smudged with dirt and what looked like blood, but she seemed uninjured. "Thalia, Elise," she acknowledged, relief evident in her voice. "The stone?" "Safe," I assured her, clutching the box. "Where's Magnus?" Lyra's expression tightened. "Fighting at the northern perimeter." The Blood Moon Alpha challenged him directly. Fear clawed at my throat. "Is he alive, last I heard," Lyra said grimly. "But their Alpha is young, powerful, and Magnus was already wounded from an earlier skirmish." I looked around the den, taking in the frightened faces, the injured wolves being tended by our healers. This was what war looked like, not the heroic tales told around pack fires, but fear and pain and uncertainty. "The shadow tale?" I asked. "Any word?" Lyra shook her head. "Nothing yet. Our messenger may not have reached them, or they may have chosen not to respond." I clutched the stone's box tighter. Our bargaining chip, our hope for alliance might be too little, too late. "And Serena?" I asked, the uneasy feeling from earlier returning. "Where is she?" A shadow crossed Lyra's face. "No one's seen her since before the attack began." The coincidence was too perfect. Serena missing. The blood moon attacking precisely when we were most vulnerable, just after the ritual, before we could seek alliance. "She betrayed us," I said quietly, the certainty settling cold in my stomach. Thalia nodded slowly. "It would explain much. Her family has always resented Magnus's, even before you came into the picture." "We can't prove it," Lyra said sharply, though doubt flickered in her eyes. "No," I agreed, "but we can prepare for it. If she betrayed us, she'll have told the Blood Moon everything. Our defenses, our numbers, our weaknesses. And one weakness in particular, our Alpha, fighting alone against a challenger who knew exactly where to strike. I made my decision in that moment, one that the old Elise, the frightened Omega, would never have contemplated. "I'm going to help Magnus." "That's suicide," Lyra protested. "You're not a fighter." "No," I agreed, "but I'm the Luna, and I have something the Blood Moon doesn't expect." I opened the containment box, just enough to glimpse the heartstone pulsing within. Its blue light spilled over my fingers, warm and alive. "You can't take it out there," Thalia warned. "If the Blood Moon captures it, they won't," I said with a conviction that surprised even me. I removed my grandmother's pendant and dropped it into the box beside the stone, then closed it securely. "Keep this safe. If I don't return," I swallowed hard, "get it to the Shadowtail. Tell them I tried to honor the old alliance." Thalia's ancient eyes filled with tears. "The grimoire is where it belongs," I finished for her. "Hidden, safe. The next Luna will find it when she's ready." Lyra stared at me, her expression shifting from disbelief to a grudging respect. "What do you need from us?" A distraction, I said. Something to draw attention away from the northern perimeter, just for a few minutes. A slow smile spread across the Alpha's sister's face. That I can provide. I slipped out of the den during the chaos of Lyra's distraction, a controlled fire at the empty food storage huts on the eastern edge of the settlement. As wolves rushed to contain the blaze, I made my way north, moving as silently as my human form allowed. The protection herbs in the pouch grew warm against my skin as I whispered the concealment spells. Not true invisibility, the grimoire had warned that such magic exacted too high a price, but a subtle shifting of attention, a tendency for eyes to slide past without truly seeing. The sounds of combat grew louder as I approached the northern boundary. Snarls, yelps of pain, the heavy thud of bodies colliding. The coppery scent of blood hung thick in the air, mixed with the musky odor of unfamiliar wolves. I crouched behind a fallen log, assessing the scene. A rough circle had formed in a clearing, wolves from both packs watching as two massive males fought in the center. Magnus, his dark fur matted with blood on one shoulder, facing a larger wolf with russet coloring that could only be the Blood Moon Alpha. They circled each other, teeth bared, muscles bunched for the next attack. Magnus moved with the fluid grace I'd always admired, but I could see he favored his right side. The injury was slowing him, and the Blood Moon Alpha knew it. As I watched, they clashed again, a blur of teeth and claws. Magnus managed to score the other Alpha's flank, but took a vicious bite to his already wounded shoulder in return. He staggered, nearly losing his footing. The Blood Moon Alpha seized the advantage, lunging for Magnus's throat. I bit back a cry of warning, knowing it would only distract him. Magnus twisted away at the last moment, the enemy's teeth closing on air. But the movement cost him. He stumbled, his injured leg giving way. In an instant, the Blood Moon Alpha was on him, pinning him to the ground, jaws hovering over his exposed throat. A killing position. Time seemed to slow. I saw Magnus's eyes, still defiant even in defeat. I saw the Blood Moon Alpha's mouth open wider, ready to deliver the death bite. I saw the circle of watching wolves, some eager, some horrified. And at the edge of the circle, half hidden in shadow, I saw Serena, her human form watching with a cold smile of satisfaction. Something broke open inside me, the last barrier of fear, of self-doubt. The final remnant of the cowering Omega I'd once been. In its place surged a power I hadn't known I possessed, ancient and primal, flowing from the earth beneath my feet, from the moon above, from the blood of every Luna who had come before me. I stepped from my hiding place, no longer attempting concealment. The protective spell shifted, transformed by my intent into something else entirely, not hiding, but revealing the truth of what I was. "Stop," I commanded, my voice carrying a power that didn't seem entirely my own. The clearing went silent. Every wolf, even the Blood Moon Alpha, turned toward me. In their eyes, I saw shock, confusion, and in some, fear. I realized what they were seeing. The protection herbs had interacted with the residual energy of the Heartstone, with the spells I'd been channeling. I was glowing with the same blue light that had emanated from the Luna's chair, from the stone itself. It traced patterns across my skin, flowing like luminous water through my pale hair, surrounding me in an aura of ancient magic. "Release him," I ordered the Blood Moon Alpha, advancing into the circle. The massive wolf snarled, but didn't move from his position atop Magnus, who stared at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. "You have no authority here, witch," a voice called, Serena stepping forward. "This is a challenge between alphas. Sacred pack law. Is it?" I turned my gaze to her, watching her flinch from the blue fire in my eyes. "Or is it an ambush orchestrated by a traitor?" Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. Even some of the Blood Moon pack exchanged uncertain glances. "You led them to us," I continued, my voice carrying to every ear. "You told them when we'd be most vulnerable. When our alpha would be distracted by the ritual. When our defenses would be weakest." "Lies," Serena hissed, but her face had gone pale. "The Luna speaks truth," another voice called, Elder Thalia, emerging from the trees with Lyra at her side. Serena was seen meeting with Blood Moon scouts 3 nights ago. We have witnesses. The Blood Moon Alpha growled, his weight shifting slightly as his attention divided between Magnus beneath him and the unexpected complications. I seized the moment of uncertainty. Drawing on every lesson from the grimoire, I reached for the most powerful truth magic, a spell that could not create lies, only reveal what was already true. By the power of the first wolf, by the blood of the Lunas who came before, I call judgment, I intoned, the words rising from some ancestral memory. Let all see the truth of loyalty and betrayal. The blue light surrounding me pulsed, then expanded outward like a shockwave. As it touched each wolf, their fur briefly glowed. Blue for those loyal to our pack, a sickly yellow for the Blood Moon wolves, and for Serena and 2 others from our pack, an ugly red that marked them as traitors. Gasps and growls erupted from both sides. Pack law was sacred among all wolves, and betrayal of one's own pack was the highest crime. The Blood Moon Alpha hesitated, clearly reassessing the situation. The easy victory Serena had promised him was unraveling, and now he faced not just an injured Alpha, but a Luna displaying power that hadn't been seen in generations. In his moment of distraction, Magnus made his move. With a surge of strength born of desperation, he twisted free, rolling away from the death bite and regaining his feet. The 2 alphas faced each other again, but the dynamic had shifted. This isn't over. The Blood Moon Alpha snarled in the guttural language wolves used in their animal forms. Oh, I believe it is, came a new voice, cool and commanding. All heads turned as a dozen new wolves entered the clearing, leaner than our pack, with silvery gray fur that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. At their head prowled a female alpha, her bearing regal and dangerous, the Shadowtail. They had come. Alpha Nyx, Thalia called in greeting, using the name of the Eastern Pack's leader. You received our message. The female wolf shifted fluidly into human form, a tall woman with striking silver-streaked hair and eyes the color of storm clouds. We did, though we were hesitant to believe it after so many generations of silence. Her gaze fixed on me, until we felt the Heartstone awaken, until we sensed the old magic stirring. Hope surged through me. Then you'll stand with us? Alpha Nyx's severe expression softened slightly. Blood calls to blood. The Shadowtail remember their debts and their alliances. She turned to the Blood Moon Alpha, who had backed away several paces, calculating the new odds. This territory is under Shadowtail protection now. Leave while you still can. For a tense moment, I thought he would refuse, but faced with an injured but still dangerous Magnus, the mysterious power I wielded, and now a dozen fresh Shadowtail warriors, even his pride gave way to survival instinct. This isn't finished, he growled, but the threat sounded hollow. Oh, but it is, Magnus replied, his voice steady despite his injuries. Take your pack and go. Any Blood Moon wolf found in our territory after sunrise will be considered an enemy combatant. The Blood Moon Alpha gave one last snarl of defiance before slinking away, his pack following reluctantly behind. Only Serena and the other traitors remained, surrounded now by growling packmates. Justice will be decided by Pack Council, Magnus announced, his gaze hard as he looked at the woman who had betrayed us. Until then, confine them. As several betas led the traitors away, Magnus finally turned to me. The blue glow around me had dimmed, but not disappeared entirely, casting soft light over his wounded form. Elise, he said, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. What did you do? I shook my head, not entirely certain myself. What the Luna is meant to do, protect the pack, protect you. His eyes, still glowing alpha gold in his wolf form, held mine. Then, to my shock, he lowered his head in a gesture of profound respect, an alpha acknowledging the power of his Luna before the entire pack and their new allies. One by one, the other wolves followed suit, creating a ripple of bowed heads extending outward from where I stood. The true Luna, Elder Thalia announced, her voice cracking with emotion, not just chosen by the chair, but by the ancient magic itself. Alpha Nyx approached, studying me with curious eyes. You carry the blood of the East in your veins. I see it now, And something else. A power that hasn't been seen since the first days. My grandmother, I said softly. She came from the east. She never told me why she left. Perhaps now we'll learn, Nyx replied with the ghost of a smile. There are many lost stories to recover between our packs. As the wolves dispersed to tend wounds and secure the territory, Magnus shifted back to human form, wincing as the transformation pulled at his injuries. Without thinking, I moved to his side, supporting him as he straightened. You could have been killed, he said, his hand warm against my waist. So could you, I countered. I wasn't going to let that happen. His eyes searched mine. I've never seen magic like that, not even in the oldest stories. I'm still figuring it out myself, I admitted. But I think this is what the chair saw, what it recognized in me. Not just the chair, Magnus said softly. I see it too. I've been seeing it more clearly every day since. He leaned closer, his forehead touching mine in the intimate gesture of wolf mates. My Luna, he murmured, the words both a statement and a question. My Alpha, I answered, feeling the rightness of it down to my bones. Around us, the pack began to rebuild, treating the injured, repairing defenses. The Shadowtail wolves integrated smoothly, offering aid and protection. Dawn was still hours away, but already the darkness seemed less absolute, the future less uncertain. I thought of the frightened Omega, who had slipped into the Great Hall a month ago, seeking only a moment's rest in a forbidden chair. That girl seemed like a distant memory now. A chrysalis discarded once the butterfly emerges. The Luna's chair had shaped to my body and refused all others, but in truth, it wasn't the chair that had transformed me. It had merely recognized what was already there, waiting to be awakened. The strength I'd always possessed but never acknowledged. The power that had been my birthright all along. As the half-moon shone down on our battered but unbroken pack, I finally understood my grandmother's last words to me. Sometimes what's broken becomes something else entirely.